All right, let's begin the meeting. We do have a quorum, I believe. This meeting is being held in a hybrid manner. Some of us board members present in the offices, and the rest are on video using Zoom. The information was presented to us via electronics before, board package, and also hard copy for most of us. And we'll begin the meeting with a roll call of board members first.
Okay. I'll do the roll call of the board and then we'll introduce the staff members that are here. For the board, Brian Noggle.
Here.
Scott Bieber. It's not here. Dick Bonner.
Here.
Norma Cusick.
Here.
Hi, Norma.
Hi.
Ted Lyons. Kevin Baker. Linda Rosenfeld.
Here.
Jeff Morgan.
Here.
Oh, hi, Jeff. Amir Famili.
Present.
We do have a quorum. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 board members present.
Okay.
For the staff, let's see, a whole bunch of them came on while I was doing roll call. So Solicitor Mike Ball from Kings Bride just came in. And then staff, in addition to myself, we have Ed Klein, John Parsons, Chris Mon, Chuck Volk, Susan Sampson, Andrew Moore, Phil DePoe, Lisa Miller. We do have some guests today. First, Matt Tranter from Kings Fry is on the call for a specific agenda item today. And it looks like we have the City Compliance Office, Brian Chamberlain, Jennifer McKenna, and Dan Koplish all together. Ned Schumacher is here from Wharton Lawson, and her Higginbotham from HDR.
Okay, since we're holding this meeting in a hybrid manner, if anybody cannot hear us or we cannot hear you distinctly, we should basically interrupt the meeting so that everybody can be heard and hear. As I said before, the board received the electronic package and also hard copy package. Did anybody not receive that from the board? All right, and the information is available online as well. A review of the agenda, first of all. We have an agenda before us. It has been posted, I take it?
It has been posted, thank you. And just wanted to note that there's a new bullet under item 2, under the review of the agenda. There's a new bullet we added called additions to the agenda. And we'll discuss that in the first discussion item related to the updated Act 65. So we have nothing specific to add to the agenda for today, but I do have one brief informational item under staff comments.
All right, but we also do have an executive session, correct?
We do have an executive session planned for after this meeting.
For the purpose of?
Thank you. Potential litigation.
Okay. At which time we do not expect any action to be taken.
Correct.
All right. Okay. Now looking at the minutes from the last meeting, actually it was a month ago, July 26th.
I make a motion we accept the minutes as published.
All right. I'll tell you what, I think I'm going to move the speaker over to there.
That's
so
fine.
that it's on the other side and closer to a mirror. Get both of them here. Usually my voice projects well enough, but if it doesn't, let me know, please. All right, motion made by Dick to accept the minutes as written.
I'll second that, right?
Seconded by Amir. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi. Aye.
How are you? Sorry.
Any opposed? I think Scott and Ted were not at the last meeting, so they're not here as well today. So Okay, motion passed to accept the meeting minutes as noted. Any public comments at this time on items that are not on our agenda? If you'd like to speak up, please do at this time.
I don't have anything, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. All right, we move in then into action and discussion items. We have one item under Finance and Administration concerning Act 65 of 2021. It's a review of the Sunshine Law updates. It's the gray copies that were in our board package. Digitally, it's pages 7 through 9.
Thank you. For your reference, at our last board meeting, Solicitor Gall provided a brief comment about the update to Act 65. And then subsequently, 2 publications were provided to us, one from a Kings Fry member, Liz Kelly, and then another one from the PSATS organization about what the Act 65 change means for public organizations. Nothing very specific, I think, to discuss other than to bring your attention to it, and also to highlight that the new agenda item under, or the new bullet under item 2, the review of the agenda, this was added specifically. Oh, please, could you let Kevin and Scott in? We have board members who are locked out of the building. We'll be with you shortly.
Like I said, being flexible.
Yes.
Had we heard from Ted at all about his attendance?
He's on.
Oh, he's on? Okay,
He's on.
so we got everybody then.
All right, we're just going to give everybody a minute to get into the room and settle, and we'll pick it back up again.
Told them to not let you in.
Social distance seating.
Yes.
Very appropriate.
All right, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, we were, just to catch everybody up, we were on the first discussion item under Finance Administration related to the Act 65, a review of the Sunshine Law update. So specifically, the one change that we wanted to make sure we're all on the same page about is when there are additions to the agenda, and how that is supposed to happen. Specifically, if there is an item that's not on the agenda, but that requires some deliberation or action by the board, that there must be a formal vote of the board to add that item to the agenda. And then the updated agenda must be published after the meeting. So the rest of the stuff that's in here, we're already doing in terms of publishing the agenda at least 24 hours in advance. We do ours a week ahead. So we don't have a lot of changes to make, but wanted to highlight that in particular. And Mike, if you have any specific items you wanted to highlight related to Act 65?
No, I think that you summarized it well. It's actually a very short amendment. Some of it just represents good practice. Some of it represents changes. The major change for some municipalities is posting the agenda on the website prior to the meeting. Now, I'm not sure when Act 65 was first introduced to the legislature, but because of the COVID situation, a lot of municipalities are doing that anyways because the meetings became actually. So that's a little bit of a change. You guys have done that already. If you're going to deliberate or wax on something that's not in the agenda, you would amend it and to add those things, and then you just have to let the public know that that occurred by posting the agenda within 1 business day after the meeting. There is a step, as Lisa said, where you have to formally amend the agenda in order to consider that as part of the agenda later. But we have that, we put that step into the current agenda, it will be there in the future. And it's not something, I don't think the board or the staff should be shy about amending the agenda. That is something that happens routinely in other institutions. So particularly since the agenda, the impact you would send out so much information. There are some exemptions involving things that happen 24 hours before a meeting or clear and present danger. But those things are really, it's not something that's going to come up a lot. So it's more if something happens that's important that you want to have resolved at a meeting, and it's happened since the pact was set out to the process for adding that to the meeting. Something that you should feel comfortable doing.
Do we also have to publish it, like post it on like the front door or something?
Yeah, you're supposed to publish it at the place of the meeting and the headquarters, which here it's the same thing. So most municipalities, not every four, but most municipalities have a community bulletin board where they would post all the notices. Have one. Someone wants to come in and read these things physically.
Any questions? That it?
Yep, that's it.
You mentioned one thing, and I wanted to thank Lisa for always getting our order package out to us about a week in advance. It's nice to have the time to be able to read that at our leisure. Thank you. All right, any questions at all, anybody? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. It's underwater. Reddington Farms developer cost sharing and water system contribution agreement. Seeking approval. It's the yellow documents or the digital pages 10 through 15.
Yes, thank you. And just to kick this one off, I'll introduce again, Matt Tranter is on the call. You would give us a wave, Matt, from King's Fry. Good to see you. Matt has been working with our team, Chuck, and the engineering group on this agreement. And this relates to the Reddington Farms development in Upper Macungie Township that requires a system extension and pump station, which we described in some detail a few meetings ago. So, Chuck, we didn't rehearse this. Do you have some comments you want to make about the agreement, or should we have Matt go through it?
We should probably have Matt go through it. I'll just say briefly, the agreement is for the developer paying about a third of the pump station cost based on his proportionate share of the capacity, and the developer paying 100% of the main extension cost. The main extension across 78 from over near the quarry to the north side of 78 to the pump station site. That's the core cost share split there.
This agreement is in a draft form, but it's a fairly well developed form that has now been shared with the developer. So if we're comfortable today with approval, it would be on a conditional basis, with some final review by all the parties. So.
As we're going through this, there's a mention of an Exhibit C, which we did not see. So if that can be explained, what's the content of that?
Okay. Matt, do you want to walk us through the agreement a little bit?
Sure. So like Chuck explained, the project is installing a new pump station on land that's owned by the Jandal estate. This agreement's conditioned upon that an agreement with Jandal being reached. We've been in communication with Joe Zader in that regard, and they're cooperating, and it's that it appears that that's not going to be an issue. But going through the agreement, the developer, in this case, Reddington Farms, is acquiring property from Jandal, and as part of that, requesting services from the Lehigh County Authority, and is going to contribute funds as set forth in the table within the agreement towards the project. And this agreement spells out how that's going to occur as far as the what's going to be included in that. Again, it's conditioned upon or contingent upon getting the land from Jandal, which is where the actual station will be located. And then there'll be, in the interim, it's anticipated that they'll have their project up and running prior to completion of the pump station. So they would be, I guess, tapping in and utilizing some services in advance of that. And then ultimately, once the project's completed, would connect to the new system.
I'm just taking a look at my file to see if I've got Exhibit C. Is this the right one? So
I think Exhibit C was shared at the last meeting when we looked at when this project was being considered. That's the cost estimate. If you have it,
what I'm showing on the screen is a prior version of Exhibit C. Chuck is trying to see if he can find the current Exhibit C, but essentially what you can see is that it just outlines the pump station estimated costs and the cost for tapping in to the water line and extending the line through the casing under I-78 to the pump station, and then the developer obligation and the LCA obligation. This has been updated though with the current numbers so that it reflects the table that's inside the agreement on page 3.
I think also that was based on the pump station cost that was incurred with less acres case situation.
It was based on current construction prices, similar prices, not identical prices.
Similar.
So, you know, the actual cost contribution will depend on the actual construction.
Right, right. So it's not, that schematic is estimating cost, but it's actually, the actual share is based on that.
So what happened, I always get interested in these projects where we're funding the developer somehow. So we're putting in an oversized pump station. He's giving us cash, capital, I guess, towards that, commensurate with his capacity. So in theory, what we're putting in is 2/3 more capacity than we need, which we presumably think is a good idea. So having partial funding for that is good then. Right. But then on the other side, when we start to charge them rates, do we recover the capital portion, their capital portion in our rate, or how does that work?
So they will pay the capital contribution up front for their 1/3 of the project cost.
So it gets a bill.
Right, as a upfront payment, as a lump sum, they'll pay that. And then
All of the money, right?
over time, through the payment of their rates, that's where Ed's cash flow analysis or net present value analysis shows that even if there is no development to pay for the other 2/3 of the costs, the additional revenue from this project will pay for it over a period of about 7 years.
Okay,
So
that's what I was asking.
But the rates were as they stand right now.
through the current rates, yeah.
Yeah.
So
We're happy
answer to your
either. We're
question,
happy either way.
yeah, we're not throwing in additional capital. It's the rates as they stand now.
Right.
Made it economically feasible.
Good. Okay, thank you.
I have some questions on the issues about who's actually going to own the land and who's responsible for acquiring the land. The first main paragraph, number 2, seems to indicate that the developer should provide the easements and/or these simple properties. Then the next paragraph down says the condition upon the authority entering an agreement with Jandal to construct the pump station and water line on the property. It's not clear who's responsible for providing us with the property to build the pump station and the water line. So the first paragraph indicates the developer, but you mentioned we're already talking with Jandal. Why are we talking with Jandal if in fact it says the developer should provide the easements and or fee simple property? It seems to me, I think what we should do is the developer entirely is responsible for providing us with the land, and we ought to own the land. I don't think we should lease any of this land. There is an indication in here that that it refers to the developer possibly subdividing off a lot for the pump station. I believe that's the way it should be done. I believe the developer should be dealing with Jandal, simply provide us with the land for the pump station and the water. And I guess the water main to the dairy is going to be provided. I'm not sure who's providing that land. But I'm not sure, to me, there's confusion here between these paragraphs, exactly how this is going to go down.
Matt, can you respond to that?
Yeah, so paragraph 2, and my understanding of this all along has been that the pump station would be on land that's owned by Jandal. Paragraph 2, if you look at it, we're just talking about to the extent that there is any land that's owned by the developer that's necessary for this project, the developer will commit to providing that. But the developer's comments to us and how we've approached this all, or what we've believed the case to be all along, is addressed in in paragraph 3, where we're talking about LCA entering into an arrangement with Jandal for the land that's going to service this. If you look at the map, there's a parcel in between where Reddington Farms will be and Jandal will be. That's the ATAS property. So again, item 2 is only talking about developer lands to the extent that it applies. It may not be applicable at all. We included it just in the event that we would need it if there was something on the developer's land. And then item 3 addresses the Jandal portion.
Why are we going to allow Jandal to own this land that our pump station is on? I think we ought to own the land.
The thinking was, Scott, that we were going to have a permanent easement, that we were going to avoid the land development process, to get around potential setback requirements, that we would have to obtain a larger tract to satisfy all the zoning requirements. There's another issue of PPL is going to construct a substation immediately to the east of where we propose to put this station. And I think that there's an understanding that they will give us access from over their access road. We would have like shared access to the station site. So that was the preliminary thinking, was to just get a permanent easement.
I mean, Jandal will have to go through that process. Who's going to go through the zoning process with the township to get the permit to build this?
We would go through that process with our engineer, all the zoning applications and everything.
Right, if we're going to go through that process, why are we leasing land from Jandal? We're the ones that got to go through that process.
Well, it's not a lease of the land, it's a permanent easement. So once we do the process, then we have permanent rights to be there.
I don't understand, what's the benefit of us doing a permanent easement versus owning the land?
It's the planning issues that Chuck just mentioned about the subdivision.
Yeah, not having to go through the subdivision, the land development process, which can be pretty time intensive. And also potential zoning issues that may not apply to an easement, like setbacks and impervious area and all those issues that would apply if we were to subdivide a lot.
Okay,
and some of it is the interest of time as well.
I mean, I thought you just said earlier though that we're going to go through the subdivision. We're going to go through the zoning process.
Well, we would go through like the zoning, all the zoning applications and approval that would be necessary, but not necessarily the land development process if we're not subdividing.
I see. You just want to avoid the subdivision.
Yeah,
correct.
And on this map that's showing on the screen, just to be clear, it doesn't show the lot lines, but the Reddington Farms project is going in here. Is that right, Chuck?
Yeah, to the west.
To the west of the water line. And then this property here is property that's retained by Jandal. So it's not part of the Reddington Farms development. it's a separate lot completely. So Reddington Farms has no real involvement with us obtaining this easement from Danville. Also, this purple line that's showing here already exists and sits on an easement that we have. So all we're talking about is this section right here where we need to put the pump station in and the crossing of I-78.
That purple line is an existing pipe in the ground for the old county, the old township pipe.
It's actually a pipe, a fire line that feeds from our north system. Under
It's our line.
78.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Reddington Farms is going to tap in off of this line that already exists on Main Street from Boglesville.
Right, that's why it's unlikely that they would need to acquire any of
Right.
these.
So you don't see, there's no liability, long-term liability at all, any problem with us not owning the land on the pump station. Permanent easements are pretty solid thing to have.
So I imagine we also have an easement for the existing purple line across that
Yes.
property. So is there a certain width to that easement?
It's probably 20 feet. And
Enough
what
to
we
get
would
it to
need-
maintain?
what we would need for the pump station would be a quarter-acre max. And we do maintain that easement so we can access that market.
Any other questions?
So we're asking for an approval of the agreement, which will help the project to continue to move forward on an expedited basis and to meet the deadline requirements for the project. And obviously, it's conditioned on Reddington Farms review and any final changes that they might have. I know that they just recently got a copy, so they still have to do their review, but looking for approval of this in substantially the same form. Mike, if you want to give the right language or however you want it to be stated.
Yeah, I could suggest that language. I do have a question about if once the agreement is signed, obviously a cost commitment by the authority. Is that something that would just be part, because the agreement is signed, that will automatically occur, or would it be another step in the process in relation to that?
Well, we're in design phase now, so we'd be back for construction phase approval when we're ready for that.
We did approve the design phase.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion would be to approve Reddington Farms developer contribution agreement substantially in the form presented, and authorize the chief executive officer to execute the agreement with such incidental changes as she deems necessary or convenient consultation with the solicitor.
I'll move what Mike said.
I'm looking for a second then.
Ted just.
Ted just motioned a second. Thank you, Ted.
It's the auctioneer's second.
All right, so this is substantial, that it's close to what the final agreement's gonna be, and if anything is beyond close, then we need to see it again.
I think that's a good idea in general, but I mean, with the heart of the agreement, I don't think expect to change. It involves an estimate of project cost, but it's only based on actual project costs and provisions based on what LCA would like the pump station to be capacity wise and what the developers requested. So in terms of the substance of the agreement, it's not expected to change. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Will the actual lease agreement come back to us for approval?
The easement,
The negotiated lease agreement, is going to have a gap.
it's not a lease agreement, it's an easement.
Easement.
And no, unlike, we do this pretty routinely for a lot of our projects.
I don't think you want to see your lease agreement. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and on this, are there any questions by anybody? All right, let's do a voice vote on this, please.
Certainly. All right, so motion made and seconded regarding the Bennington Farms main extension developer contribution agreement and all the good things that Mike Paul said.
So noted.
Yep. Brian Mogul,
Yes.
Scott Beaver,
Yes.
Dick Bonner,
Yes.
Norma Cusick,
Yes.
Ted Lyons,
Yes.
Kevin Baker,
Yes.
Linda Rosenfeld,
yes,
Jeff Morgan,
Yes.
Amir Famili.
Yes.
Thank you. 9 yes votes.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
And
Matt.
Chuck. And Mike. All right. Thank you, everybody. We have nothing under wastewater, and we move on to item number 7 on the agenda, monthly financial review. July report was attached. Digital packet, pages 16 through 25.
And I'll just note that the presentation I'm going to share on the screen was emailed to the board and posted online. So if anyone is joining by phone, you should have access to it. And Ed.
Okay, for July. In net income for the month.
I'm sorry. Just let me interrupt you. Can you move the microphone closer to Ed?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Just a little further down on the table is good. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
right there. So for the month, let's take a look at the income statement. Look at all that green. So essentially, for all 3 funds on the income side, for just a month, we were all positive. So that makes LCA a positive net income, which is good. That compares to pretty much the same thing on the forecast side. We predicted positive, so against the forecast numbers, we're good on all 3 funds with respect to forecast, and that makes LCA as well. So that's a good start. On the cash flow side, water, wastewater, city division all finished on the positive side of cash flow, so the rent surpluses that means LCA did as well. Actually, we had only forecasted 1 negative cash flow, that was in suburban wastewater. So on a forecast comparative basis, all 3 funds and LCA have also did better than we forecasted, even with the surplus. So the surplus was better than we thought. Okay, year to date. Again, all 3 funds on the income side were positive, helped a lot on $2.5 million on the city side and 1.9 on wastewater. So each one being positive, the LCA finished at $5.2 million of positive net income. Year to date, suburban water was just down a little bit to forecast on year-to-date basis. Wastewater and city division finished with a favorable variance to forecast, and ultimately LCA finished with a favorable variance as well. That is on income. On cash flows, suburban water was positive, but it was down a little bit to forecast by $27,000. Wastewater was on the negative side at $162,000, but better than forecast. So we had said it was going to be a lot worse on the forecast side. So we did better than forecast by $331,000 rounded up. The city, $6.9 million of cash came in versus 6.2 on the forecast, so we were favorable by $762,000 rounded. LCA in total, 7.1 versus 6, so we're almost $1.1 million better than forecast. On debt service coverage ratios, all 3 funds are better than the internal target of 1.20. Essentially, water is down a couple of basis points against forecast. Wastewater was better, city division was better than the forecast as well. So I'm good month and year to date. So just some of the major factors that can influence from water. Net income, well, we were positive. However, it's in red because we finished $100 and some thousand off the forecast. A couple things happening here. You got higher operating revenues. You got a negative impact from higher operating expense, and which eroded the revenue gain. Most of that was labor costs charged in. And interest expense was also higher. So ultimately, the operating expenses and the higher interest expenses more than offset the positive effect of higher operating revenues. So on the cash flow side, we did finish at a surplus. We did, however, finish lower than forecast. And pretty much that is all attributable to the income factors that we just talked about. With that being off the forecast, we made up some of the lower interest payments with the refinancing having a favorable effect on that. And CAPEX was pretty much in line with the forecast. All right, year to date, suburban wastewater better than zero, so we had a positive net income. This one was also higher than forecast. Interestingly, this is pretty much affected by favorable operating expenses because operating revenues were a little bit off, mostly on lower tapping fees, but the operating expenses more than made up for that. And that was the opposite effect of suburban water, where labor charged in was lower. And we had lower expense CAPEX as well. So positive and better than forecast. Cash flow side, and I had a deficit.
Quick question. How do we forecast the tapping fees? Do we have like the development go up, they guesstimate they're going to be 100 tapping fees and then development doesn't go up?
It's a shot in the dark at times. And you know what I mean? And it's like sometimes you're lucky and you get really close. You try to use some type of normal figure and let some of the positive and negative fall out over time. Unless we know like a year ago when we had a specific customer that was going to pay us a certain dollar amount, we got that right.
I mean, the people who are paying, what they're paying. So your tapping fee, your forecast was going forward is based on the new customers.
Right.
So is that guesstimate that the timing off, or it's just?
Most of the time it's timing, because you're affected by, when all of this is going to transact, and you're trying to plan it out kind of 3 months in advance. So it's pretty tough to do. So on the cash flow side, we ran a deficit. However, it was better than forecast. The nice things that we talked about from higher net income helped that. And CAPEX was slightly lower, so that should be in green as well. So sometimes I lose track of my colors. City division, positive net income, better than forecast. This particular one, we had higher user charges / volume and higher tapping fees. We did get some timing right on this. Operating expenses were lower, and that helped as well. We had higher labor and expense CAPEX, and that was aided by favorable spending on other categories across the board. So you had a little bit of offset from the labor and expense CAPEX, but on total across the other categories, they carried a favorable variance. Cash flows ran at a surplus, higher than forecast, higher net income, and CAPEX was again pretty much in line with forecast. So this is what operating revenues looks like. You can see 7.6. We're pretty much in line year to date. We think we're going to finish the year up just a little bit, 12.9 to 12.7 on suburban water. So we look across suburban wastewater, again, not much variance year to date, 11.51 versus 11.56. So we're down a little bit. We think we're going to finish the year at 20.1 versus 20. So actually, we're looking for that to rebound in the remaining months of the year. So that's good. On the city side, we are saying that year to date, we're 25.7 versus 25.0 in terms of operating revenues. And we think we're going to finish a little bit higher or a little bit below what we budgeted for the year, 45.4 versus 46. And actually, some of that is the customer relief fund that we did not have. On the operating expense side, suburban water is up a little bit, not much to forecast. We think that we're going to finish better than budget, 10.7 versus 11.2. So that is good. On year to date at suburban wastewater, we're at 9.5 versus 9.8 again. That's good. And we expect to finish at 18.1 versus 18.8. So again, we think operating expenses are going to help us in the suburban wastewater fund as well. On the city side, we're at 13.5 versus 13.5. It's actually just a little bit favorable. We think we're going to be 27.792 versus 27.776. So that one's going to be closer to budget than the other two funds. CapEx spend. Year to date, we're 1.5 versus 1.5. Chuck and his crew had done a great deal, spent a great deal of time and effort looking at CapEx numbers during July, and you can see the effect of that. And we're still tweaking some of the numbers. So we'll continue to look at that forecast, but spot on in terms of year to date. And we think we're going to be 4072 versus the budget of 4019. So a small variance there on the favorable side. Suburban wastewater, we're 2070 versus the year to date 2303. So we fell off a little bit to forecast. And for the year, we think we're going to be at 3822 versus 3922. So almost $100,000. On the city side, we're 3.4 versus 3.4, so we're pretty close and actually on rounding with respect to forecast. Year to date, where we think we're going to be for the year is 7.6 versus 8.9. Affecting that number, which is like $1 million worth of EFDs that we're not borrowing for, that are delayed. So they got some spending coming in, but the deferment of the borrowing from PennVest BFD project is now stretched that out more into next year than this year. And it was in the budget for this year. Okay, so the year-to-date operating ratio, all good. 1.26 versus 1.13 and 1. So that's good at suburban water. And this includes depreciation. So 1.21, 1.06, and 1 on suburban wastewater. So again, good. And on the city side, 1.91 versus 1.66 in 1. Again, good across both targets. So meaning the LCA in total looks good compared to budget and compared to internal. Okay, taking depreciation out of the picture. Actually, the rates go up and across the board, suburban water better than 2 targets at 1.69. And on suburban wastewater, again, 1.69, which is also better than 2 targets. And even on the city side, 2.56 versus 2.1 and 1.15. So we've got an operating ratio that's gone above 2. And LCA is above 2 as well, 2.1 versus 1.76 and 1.20. I think we touched on the debt service coverage ratio. The good news is 1.6, 11.06, and 1.89 are all above the threshold of 1.20. And in this particular case, looks better than the budget for the year as well. So all good. And LCA in total is a 2.21 versus the 1.8 or 1.20. So good coverage ratios. And last but not least, trying to keep 180 days of cash on hand. We're doing quite well in suburban water. Actually doing fairly well in suburban wastewater, and above that line a little bit on the city as well, at 183.2. So happy to see that we've got enough cash reserves on. This is just kind of touching on the forecast for the year. We said that all 3 funds were going to be positive, so that LCA is positive. We think the city division is going to be down to forecast. Again, driving that is $500,000 worth of customer relief fund. Suburban water and suburban wastewater are going to be on the favorable side, so LCA will be favorable as well. On suburban water, we think we're going to finish at -2.6, which is better than the 3.5 that we budgeted. So that's going to show a favorable budget variance. Wastewater, we think we're going to finish about 3.1 versus 2.3, so that's going to be better as well. And the city division, 1.1 versus 4.7. We're taking the $2 million out of the equation on that. Another $500,000 worth of customer relief fund, so that's affecting that. We're still looking at the Q3 forecast, and then I got to hedge a little bit on the city, saying I think there's a little bit more upside than downside on the city. So. And again, all on the debt service forecast for the year looks all good. 1.48 versus 9.15 for wastewater, 1.57 for the city. So they're still looking very good as well.
But do you consider that total LCA, that is your net income?
Yeah, that's consolidating all 3. But I like to look at the total business because it tells me something. Almost kind of like Air Products looking at their consolidating figures and then settling on what are some of the segments to it.
Okay, done. Any questions?
Questions?
See you back. All right, now we move on to monthly system operations overview. July report was attached. Digital board package 26 through page 32.
John,
Yes, hello everyone. I'll be doing the July 2021 report, and starting today, moving forward, we're going to be using a little bit of a different format as requested. I won't be regurgitating all these lines number by number to all of you. I'm just going to hit on some of the highlights that I see within this and some other, just a little brief description of what we had to deal with today because of the hurricane that moved through yesterday. And we believe we'll get further into important topics by going that way, going that route. If you'll notice in the water production, Allentown is about 2.5 MGD higher than our annual average was last year. That's not totally unusual for summer numbers. We're pulling about 3 MGD extra out of the Lehigh Creek to make up for that. Central Lehigh demand was about 2 MGD more than last year's average. So basically the plant is running more to supply extra flow to suburban as best we can. Precipitation totals for July, 4.5 inches of rain. We had 3/4 of that in the last 24 hours. So August's numbers are going to be significantly higher than what we've seen so far this summer. Emergency declarations, we did have one that does not need a retroactive declaration, and that occurred late in July at the Wynwood treatment plant. The Wynwood collection system, where we had a pump station that had some mechanical failures within it, and we decided to replace all the piping, valving, check valves, and the pumps that had become into a very degraded condition. So instead of trying to just piecemeal it, we replaced pretty much everything that had degraded over the years. The total for all that work was $48,000. Like I mentioned, that was signed off by Lisa. We did not need any kind of retroactive emergency declaration. Description of NOVs and SSOs. There was one SSO in July occurring at 1204 East Woodlawn Street in Allentown. An 8-inch line backed up with excessive grease. Approximately 100 gallons was estimated to have been released. There was one NOV last month. The Arcadia wastewater treatment plant was issued an NOV on 7/8/21. We responded to that within the 15-day limit. Basically, to give you the lowdown about Arcadia, which went online, I believe, about 8 years ago. Basically, we had trouble meeting permit numbers from day one on that system. Arcadia treats mostly warehouses and places like that. There's a elementary school upstream that we serve, but we didn't really get any warm water to talk about during the daily flows. The water always came in cold, and since the treatment plant is above ground, we had trouble, like I said, meeting ammonia, nitrogen, and CVOD and several other parameters that are listed in this report from day one. We did, after we put the plant online, we did put insulation around the concrete base because, like I said, it was exposed to the elements and made treatment during the cold weather months extremely difficult. A couple years later, I believe 2015 or 16, we put heaters in each of the SBRs, and we covered each of them as well to try to keep as much heat in as we possibly can. So if you read through the list of violations that we had over the last, since 2016, they're just about all treatment related. We've gotten the plant focused to the point where we're not having as many violations as we've had before, but unfortunately we are still having some fecal coliforms being the most recent ones. Like I said, hopefully we are moving forward to try to fix that. DEP sent us a NOV based on the last 6 years. The NOVs or the violations actually went further back than that. So they just kept it within a 5-year span as far as the violations went. Just like I said, a little note about operations today. We're on the heels of Tropical Storm Fred and then Hurricane Henri yesterday. We received about 3 inches of rain in the last 24 hours. Klein's Island wastewater treatment plant was up to 80, almost 80 MGD, which means we were like within a hair of bypassing today, which still has not happened, but we are right there at the limit. We are bypassing at Heidelberg for the second time in a week. Water filtration plant is recovering from a very high turbidity event last night. Little Lehigh is very flashy. The flow and the turbidity go up and down very fast. We're on the downward side right now. We did have to pull back a little bit from the interconnect, so we have some additional flow coming from the wells at this point in time. Short term, probably for a day or two. So, with all that said, I don't know if there's any questions on what I talked about today, but feel free if you have.
Yeah, was there any discussion ever about us building a new Arcadia wastewater treatment plant? Why do I think?
It's only 8 years old.
Yeah, we did. It was like 2018, we built a new one. And we rehabbed it about 2 to 3 years later. And we're still, I mean, we're basically dealing with it as best we can. There were some things that we wish we had changed now, but you can look back in retrospect and say we could have changed a lot of things, but there's some things that are really causing us some problems treatment wise.
Yeah, are we paying fines on these north of violation?
Fines, Andrew, can you help me with that one?
No, we haven't received any fines for any of these violations.
Usually they give you the NOVs and then they fine you later on.
Yeah, that's correct. So we would usually get some type of consent order, and then there would be some type of monetary fines associated with that.
But John, you said these NOV is for just last 5 years, but problems occurred before that. I remember the issues with the freezing, at least the temperature and that stuff. But has the quality of the inflow changed anything from day one from what we expected? That causes is designed to not meet the requirements necessary to discharge properly? We should never get to the point of having an NOV, but after repeated violations at this facility.
There might be some new industries that have come in since we built the plant. Andrew can help me with that. But in the meantime, like I said, we got low temperatures and we got high ammonia for whatever reason from a lot of dischargers. So we got a lot of problems coming into the plant at the same time that until we get a good handle on operationally how to handle all of that, it's been a struggle.
Yeah, the influent flow, it really varies, and that has to do with what's attached to it. It is a lot of commercial properties. So it's not like your typical residential plant where it's fairly consistent. So there are operational changes that need to happen. If you look at the letter, the majority of them are fecal coliform related. And we committed to a few different items to hopefully mitigate that. So I'm really hoping we see some positive outcomes coming up.
Would we ever consider requiring pre-industrial treatment on any of these customers? Pre-treatment, industrial pre-treatment. We don't require that on any of these customers, do we?
No, we have sampled some of the industries. I don't want to call them industries, commercial properties in the past. But as far as a true industrial pre-treatment program, no.
It's mainly big boxes in the school, right?
Correct. Yeah, except if you remember a couple of years ago, there was, I believe, a large amount of juicy juice or something like that got dumped down the drain up there. And we had all kinds of CBOD problems because of it. So they didn't know that they weren't supposed to flush such things down the drain. And it caused us no end of problems because we couldn't deal with it. So again, getting a handle on the system, getting a handle on the plant, there's a lot of things going on. Andrew, do you recall in their permit for Arcadia, is there an upper limit of chlorine as well for discharge?
Off the top of my head, I don't think so, because that one doesn't technically go to a stream. It goes to a ditch.
Sorry, I put you on the spot, because that runs us into problems at other plants, because we try to get a good kill off without getting high residual chlorine going out, and it's hard to balance. There's a different, go ahead. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, that plant has a UV system, and
which we've had trouble with. Yeah,
water there is fairly hard. So with that being said, just the buildup on the bulbs it happens fairly quick. So that is one of the items that we committed to, is cleaning them more often. Because once that buildup gets on the bulbs, you don't really get the wavelengths going through the water and deactivating the fecal coliforms.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for the reminder. I forgot about the UV.
Any other questions for John?
Yes.
Dick?
I'd like to know where the 16 tons of chlorine is going and in what form is that?
Where it's going?
You said it's leaving Central City.
Well, eventually we'll have to put it into the actual effluent to get rid of it, because we're not going to be able to take it back to where it came from. So we will be returning once the system is online and fully operational. And we did have a couple of burps this week, so it may be longer than we thought to get to that point. But eventually, when we're fully converted, we'll put the effluent will spike the effluent with chlorine as well to empty the cylinders.
Yeah, that chlorine gas will be used up, and then the full conversion to sodium hypochlorite solution for disinfection will occur.
I have no idea.
What he means is it's just being used up, then we don't have to order anymore.
Right.
And we get rid of that safety, that major safety issue down there.
I have no idea what they said, but if it sounded okay to you, I'll accept it.
There's currently that much chlorine being used and it's stored in Allentown.
Right.
And when we get rid of it all, we won't be replacing it, so the citizens will be safe. And the employees.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in the form of
Doesn't say that.
16
Says it's
one
being
ton
removed.
cylinders.
Okay,
Thank you. It'll no longer be an element.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, staff comments.
All right, I have one informational item, and this will be quick. This is really just an awareness for the board about a potential project that we've been brought into recently. And I have a map I just want to show you. This involves a small system in North Whitehall and South Whitehall Township. And it's a sewer system. Essentially what we've been approached about is the Parkland School District Middle School property has a small wastewater treatment plant located on it that is not functioning well and has a lot of challenges. And so there's a solution that's needed there, or a rehab or an upgrade that's needed there. And at the same time, across the township boundary in North Whitehall Township, there is some vacant property that is a potential future development opportunity that will need, if it develops, will need sewer service. And so DEP has gotten involved, and the two townships have been communicating about what to do in this area. And we've been approached about being involved in some way. DEP is trying to coordinate a meeting for a couple weeks from now to talk about this, with the idea being that this Parkland School District facility would be torn down and a new wastewater treatment plant built in its place that would serve the school district as well as some of this other potential service area. And if that's the case, then the development would pay for the new plant and LCA would own and operate that plant. DEP has specifically said they want public municipal entity to own and operate a facility in this area. They don't want the school district in the wastewater business. And they basically said it will be Lehigh County Authority that's asked to handle this. So it's all very preliminary at this point. Like I said, we have a meeting in a couple of weeks to meet with the parties and learn more about what the options are for this. But because it's something that's coming our way, I wanted the board to be aware of it.
Has North Whitehall Township mentioned anything to you about extending that sewer service into that whole area there? Because that whole area is served by on-site sewage.
Yeah.
And they have tremendous problems there because I'm the sewage officer in North Whitehall, I know about it.
They have mentioned that, Scott, that they have some failing on lot systems in this area. And so it would be something of like a mini 537 plan or a small sewage facilities plan to capture not only this development opportunity in the school, but some of the surrounding needs for service for failing on lot.
Yeah, there's a trailer park in there that's
Yeah.
got a real nasty problem with some of the other properties that just have systems that real small lots and they have continuing problems all the time. It would be great if we would be able to extend some sewer there, especially along that Clemsville Road.
Yeah.
And the whole area, I mean, really the whole area ought to be, I mean, I think Norma Shay's restaurant down there, I think she's still using it. I don't know if it's true or not. Last time I was in Norma Shay's a long time ago, they had outhouses.
Oh,
I don't know if they still do, but it's pretty terrible. So that whole section needs public sewer. And I always thought that the Parkland School District sewage plant is that should be expanded to service the whole area.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I would hope that's where this thing eventually leads. I really think.
we really won't know until the townships kind of put their heads together about what the service area looks like and what they want to achieve. But it's an emerging issue, and I thought that the board should be aware.
I have to leave the meeting.
Okay, Linda,
Bye,
thank you.
Linda.
Bye-bye.
My question of always on something like that is, will the system be built to our standards and constructed to our standards? So we don't have the nightmares like we have in other places,
Yeah.
taking over other people's systems.
Our involvement would have to be contingent on that it's our design, our review, and that we are given a plant that we know is gonna work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Solicitor comments?
No comments, thank you.
Any comments from the public on any items whatsoever?
No comment.
No, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Well, okay, the published agenda is completed. We will now go into recess. It's 1:05, and we'll reconvene at 1:15 in executive session. And the information was provided for our Zoom participants in the letter that Emily put out on the 16th at 11:11 a.m.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.